It's Adbreak time. I'm proud to announce that the Beyond Solitaire podcast is sponsored by Central Michigan University's Center for Learning Through Games and Simulations. 500-year-old vampire Jason Cox's cooperative role-playing game is now shipping, and even better, there's a Halloween sale for orders placed before the end of the month. On top of that, there is a new crowdfunding campaign on the horizon. In mid-January 2025, look out for Keep the Faith, a role-playing game about building a religion, which will be on BackerKit. The designer is Greg Loring Albright, who designed Ahoy, and I'm very proud to say that I'm at work on the curriculum guide, so I'm extra excited about this one. Also, if you want to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/BeyondSolitaire and help me keep the lights on. But for now, let's get on with the show. Hey, gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and this week on the pod, I have a very special guest. I'm very happy to have David Digby. He is a game designer, a game developer, and a solo mode specialist. How you doing today, David?
Yes, I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on, Liz.
Yeah, actually, I was looking for interviews with you, and I did not find as many as I was expecting.
Oh, okay. I've done a few in the past. I think a few people have pinned me down on certain games or certain projects, but yeah, I've done a few. Quite happy doing them.
Yeah, so you do like a broad range of work within gaming. So would you be willing to kind of describe some of the different roles that you currently have within the industry, within specific gaming projects?
Yeah, I suppose there's sort of three arms to it. Really, a lot of my work is spent as a developer. I've got a few publishers who I work with as a lead developer or a developer, whereby I'll be in charge of the whole development of an entire project. So taking the game from the designer or working with the designer, then going through all the playtesting type stuff, getting it through to final rules and all that sort of stuff nailed down. Solo design then is more on a sort of just short burst basis. Design the project, might do some playtesting, might do all the dev. It varies depending on the size of the publisher and the arrangements with them. And then I do rulebook editing as well. That can fit in with the other projects. So I might do the rulebook editing and the solo mode. I might just do the rulebook editing. I might do the rulebook editing and the dev. So those sort of things tend to fit together in various places for various projects.
Which aspect of your work did you start doing first?
I started off just volunteering to do playtesting. And then I think from playtesting, solo design came about first. And then playtesting evolved into developing just on a sort of very gradual basis that you wouldn't sort of know it. And then suddenly I was in charge of stuff. Rulebook editing came along slightly later. I was incredibly fortunate to get a chance to work alongside Paul Grogan and just sort of did proofreading with him and learn the trade from him and the sort of what he brought to the industry just as Paul was starting to phase out the amount of editing he was actually doing. So that sort of picked up then, and I don't do masses of it, but I do enough to sort of fit in around other things.
So you're primarily a dev and a solo mode creator and developer. So what in particular attracted you to solo modes? Is it because you're a solo gamer in your spare time, or is it just something that emerged naturally from the playtesting you were doing?
I certainly was a solo gamer at the time when it sort of kicked off. I was just in a place in my life where solo gaming was a thing. I was playing plenty of solo modes. I'd sort of got back into board gaming much more intensely. And it was kind of like, well, okay, well, I've got, a regular group that meets on a Friday once a month, but I want to play a board game now. So I'll play a solo game. So I sort of got back into it that way. The design aspect sort of happened. Chocolate Factory was my first one. And this is quite a good story. So we'll go into this one in to a degree. But I was playtesting Chocolate Factory for Alley Cat. And just playtesting the normal multiplayer game towards the end of the process. And I had some time off my full-time job, and I popped up and I did some time with them up in Letchworth and did some conventions and things with them. And So we were working on Chocolate Factory, and they said, "Oh, we've got that. The designers have done a solo mode for it. Can you have a quick look? Because you play some solo games, don't you?" Yeah. And my feedback was, "That's rubbish." And they went, "Well, go on then. You do better. You've got 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Oh, geez.
For concept. I think the whole thing took me about 6 weeks total. So I said, okay, then I went away and I designed something, and I sketched up a system that I thought worked better. I took it back to them. I explained why I thought it was better, what I thought it did, and they went, great, we'll publish that. Just finish the playtesting. Let us know when the rules are done. I was like,
Oh.
oh, okay. Through the
Did it turn out
playtesting.
well? I've never played Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, I think it did a job. It had some flaws in it that I would, if given the chance, go back and fix. It was a little bit too random in the sense that if it's set up in a certain way, it was just really difficult. Or you could get a fairly easy run of it. So there was kind of like a setup element that was a bit too random in its concept. But generally, I thought it gave the right game experience. A refined version of a similar concept is Distilled. Distilled came out of I think this overall design system works really well, and it will fit Distilled brilliantly, but now I've got another crack at it. This is how I can make it. This is how I can correct the faults that were sort of in the concepts around Chocolate Factory. But yeah, I mean, it still gets spoken about as a solo game. So for people that like that sort of game, I think it's still doing a job.
Excellent. So, you had your first crack at solo design. Did further opportunities for that come immediately after, or did it just happen more slowly?
We're going back a few years, and I'm not a memory expert, but they seemed to come pretty hard and fast at that point in terms of solo projects, because it was fairly concurrent in teaming up with David Turczi and Nick Shaw and working on things like Roman Roll, and the T series from Board and Dice, or NSKN as they were at the time. So just sort of doing that. Well, okay, well, I'm not doing the design. Those guys are doing the design, but I'm doing a lot of dev work on these. I'm learning the ropes. And then other projects just sort of started to pop up, either because David threw them my way, because he didn't want to do them or couldn't do them, or people were kind of like, "Oh, you did the solo for that. Can you have a pot shot of this one?" And just contacts within the industry that sort of went, do you want to have a crack at it? Do you want to see what you can do? So it just sort of built up from there, really. And that at that point, I still a proper job, so a full-time job in another industry entirely, and it was just sort of fitting projects round the time that I had.
How did you end up working with David Turczi? I've always wondered how this alliance came to be. So
Good question that I don't precisely know the answer to. I've got a feeling Paul asked me to do the proofreading on Roman Roll for PSC. PSC then asked me to look at the play testing of Roman Roll. And then I went direct to Nick and David to say, PSC have asked me to take a look at this while I'm doing the rule book. And I sort of got chatting to them in that frame, and they said, well, if you got time, can you also have a look at, I think we were doing Trismegistus. They were working on Trismegistus at the time, so it was, can you have a look at that one while we've got you? Can you do some play testing on this one as well, because there's some things we're trying to fix. And it just sort of developed from there, really. We got on well, and the working relationship continues to be one that works out for everyone. But yeah, the exact timing of what order things happened in, but that's as much as I can remember, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people get to know each other and connections happen, and it just kind of organically comes to be. So I just checked on Roman Roll. BGG says it came out in 2020. Did you get into solo gaming in a big way again right before the pandemic, then it sounds like?
Yeah, so 2017, 2018 kind of would have been when when sort of board gaming came back into forethought. Basically, for many years my other hobby and now my other work is within cricket, and at 35 the body was struggling, and lots of aches and pains, and I was gradually doing more and more coaching, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop playing. I think I've had my time of running around like an idiot after a little Red Bull 2 or 3 times a week. And ball gaming then filled that void, so I packed in playing cricket in sort of about this time of year, so September time, and ball gaming sort of took over from there as kind of like, well, this is going to be my primary hobby, fill my spare time type thing, and built up from there. So that would have been sort of late 17, early 18 type period.
You know what's funny about that is that that's around when I started my channel, and I know several other people who are also kind of like something must have been in the water in those years, because a lot of people who'd enjoyed gaming when they were younger or had just casually enjoyed it, like really locked in during that stretch.
I think that was certainly a peak point in the hobby getting more well known, more popular, lots more choice, so you could find something you really enjoyed rather than going, I like playing games and this game is fine. I think that that was a bit of a boom because of the start of crowdfunding and Kickstarter projects and things, and stuff hitting the market, and pretty good retail prices and things, so you could kind of get that entry in without spending an absolute fortune. I do think that was kind of a peak period, and that's perhaps why we saw that sort of boom period around that time. And then obviously the whole industry changed when we had COVID and all of that sort of stuff. It had a big effect on everything everywhere, but ball gaming as well.
Yeah. Probably better for our industry than a lot of them, but wouldn't go through that again if I have a choice.
No.
So this is kind of like set a good, I think, background to ask you some further questions. So you talked about, I guess, kind of learning the ropes with David Turczi. How would you say that working with him has impacted your work as a solo designer, especially because you can actually see work before him, work done with him, and then also work done without?
Yeah, I've learned a lot from the way that David sort of works and the way that he works in two ways. From a game design point of view, the I can't do it anywhere near as quickly as he can, but the analysis of, right, what is this game about? What are the key interactions? What are the really important things that players need to be able to do? And especially David predominantly does AI based solo design. I think I've got a wider range than that. I don't just go, okay, this is a great multiplayer game. How do I build something that replicates another human being? David kind of predominantly does those style of mode, which is great. So there's kind of that aspect of being able to unpick and go, right, what do I care about when it's not my turn? What interaction points here are really key, and what are the things that we can just get rid of and we can just keep as simple as possible, and learning those sort of decision making and how to go about that. And also in terms of system design, in terms of, right, okay, how much prior knowledge do we have of someone's turn before it's their turn? I think you're going to do either that or that. Right, how do we bake that into the solo system that gives us the correct interaction points? So if I've got a rough idea of what you're doing on your turn, I need a rough idea of what an AI might do on its turn. If I've got no idea what another human being is going to be on their turn, great, random card flip, sorted. If I've got almost perfect knowledge of what another person's going to do on their turn, then what little tweak, what little twist do we need in there to make it fun, that it's not just following a script? And it's finding those balances that I think David is really good at in terms of the system design he comes up with. On another aspect, he's also, certainly within board gaming, a really outgoing, really confident, likes dealing with people, likes talking to people. I'm not that, but you can sort of channel a little bit of that inner thing, and you can go, right, you know, when you're stood there at a queue in a show like Essen, and there's a publisher you really want to talk to, and you're just sort of stood there on the stand going, I'd quite like to talk to them. You kind of go, right, channel your inner Turczi. Just walk up to them, shake their hand, tell them who you are, and start talking. So that, you know, the working with anyone is more about than what the product that you just produce at the end. So there's that kind of aspect that I've got David to thank for as well, to a certain extent.
Awesome. So you mentioned that your interest in different systems goes beyond just kind of creating an AI opponent. Would you say that you have a favorite type of solo design to do, or a favorite type to play? What are you looking for in the opponents that you make, and how is that influenced by what you like to play yourself?
I do virtually no solo gaming now, and that's
Crimes
that's
canceled.
sort of twofold, threefold. I don't know how many folds there are in that decision making, but basically, I'm now in a position in my life where a lot of my gaming is done with my partner. We spend a lot of time playing games together. That's great. That's brilliant. That's how I like to spend my spare time. How we like to spend our spare time. He wasn't obviously around a few years ago when I was playing lots of solo games instead. So, you know, that's just a change in life circumstances. Solo gaming is also work now. It is what pays my bills to a certain extent. And therefore, if you want to play a game for fun, do you want to play a game that feels like work? Probably not. So there's that aspect to it, and a kind of time management thing. Okay, well, I've got time to play a solo game. I could play this solo game that I'm getting paid to play, or I could play this solo game to just play for fun. Probably going to do the one that's paying me. But in terms of what I look for, I want solo games to be interactive. I want the game to be a challenge without it being too aligned to my typical negative experience of co-op games. Flip a card, game says you're screwed. That's not fun. I don't want to. I don't enjoy that aspect of games. So the co-op games whereby you sort of, what did we play last week for my for someone's birthday? We played Cthulhu Death May Die. At the end of your turn, flip a card, everything goes wrong, everybody dies, you've caught fire. Right, okay. That's not my sort of gaming experience. But if a solo game is, here is your opponent and they've just done something and they've stolen that thing that you really wanted on your turn, still a flip of a card. It's still a bit random, but in that I much prefer that experience because I feel like I can do something about it. Well, you should have chosen it on your turn then, shouldn't you? You had an opportunity to go to that worker placement space. You had an opportunity to draft that card, and you gave it up in favor of that thing, knowing you were running the risk of someone taking it away from you, and they've taken it away from you. You haven't randomly caught fire and fallen down a hole. So my play preferences very much go down that route. I'm a Euro player at heart. So anything that involves blood, guts, gore, shooting people, death and things, that's not particularly my thematic area. Give me some cubes to shuffle and run a little farm and build a house. Great. Thematically and mechanically, that's kind of where I'm at. And my design work probably reflects that, because if someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, we really want you to design a solo mode for this game," I'll go, "Don't want to play it. No thanks."
So where does Undaunted fit that for you? Because it's like a war theme, but it's not really like a blood, guts, and gore kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, Undaunted was very much like one where Turczi got the initial nod to design the solo mode for it. He went, "My God, this is going to be hard work. I need someone who can do effectively all the donkey work." Spoke to me about it, and I said, "Oh, I don't know, a war game." And then we played it, and I went, "My God, that's a brilliant 2-player deck builder with spatial elements and different troop types, and you can engine build in the sense of build your deck in what way." That's a fantastic 2-player experience, even if it is about war. And I think that I think that's what Undaunted as a series does really well, is that people that aren't war game fans can get into it because it is so mechanically engaging. And obviously with the new Callisto stuff, that's kind of gone, okay, well, now we're abstracting out the war stuff and we're making it in future and in space, and there's people that can deal with that better than they can with historical war.
Interesting. So again, you've worked with Turczi on a lot of projects, and so Turczi's solo modes are very flow charty, especially if you look at something heavy like Tricurion or something like Europa Universalis, Price of Power. What are your personal ideas, I guess, about the amount of work you expect a player to put in to running a solo mode or looking through its decisions?
So I very much prescribe to a theory that's called complexity budget. Okay, so every board game project has got a complexity budget, and you treat it just like you would the financial budget. So this game is aiming to be a midweight Euro, 3 on BGG, appeal to a wide audience. It's got a cartoony art style. It's got a fairly light real world theme, a sort of typical alley cat product type place. Okay, that's my complexity budget. So I've got then a concept of how complex can I make this so that the solo mode is as complex as the multiplayer game, but potentially in quite a different way. So this is quite a light game. I haven't got much to work with here. Where do I really need to spend that complexity budget to get the gameplay experience that I want to come out of it? Alternatively, here's a massive experience, really complicated, very in-depth, very detailed. The complexity budget is massive. Great, let's go to town. Let's make this as in-depth and as realistic and as player-like as we can. And we're going to fill it full of decision trees and flowcharts and think. I mean, that's kind of how it has to work. Certainly in my head. So, to take, for example, a game like Distilled, although it's expensive, is not that big a game. It's light to medium. There's a few rules in it, but it's not masses. The complexity budget in that project was not big. It's also quite low in interaction. So that needed a solo mode that didn't replicate another player. It needed a system that constrained the player. So the complexity budget was spent on this game plays quite differently to the way that you will play multiplayer, in the sense that structurally it's quite different. You've got to do da-da-da-da-da-da by the time you get to the end. If you haven't done it all, you've lost. So that system is quite different, but the actual what you do on your turn is identical to a multiplayer game, and you haven't got to replicate anyone else doing anything. So that's where you can spend the budget. Now, this one isn't out yet, but it's the antithesis of what's at the other end of the scale. We're doing, or we have done, a Daimyo titled game, and I can't remember the subtitle, with Stone Sword Games, and it's a Martin Wallace 6-player war game. And the solo mode is you versus 5 asymmetrical bots.
Ooh. I'm interested.
And it's crackers, because it's we've effectively I did it with Xavi Bordes, who's done other collaborations with Dave Turczi as well, and does stuff for Devere on their solo mode. And we've effectively designed 3 completely different solo systems. And we've done it for all 6 asymmetrical players. So that's just nuts. But the complexity budget is massive, because this is going to be, 4 point something or other on the BGG scale. It's a big box. It's a big experience. So that we had.
If you've already signed up for that, then.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to play the game, and I think we were running at something like playtests for like 4 to 6 hours. If you're going to sit down and you're going to play a game to that degree, why not learn a solo system that replicates all 5 other players?
Right.
If the game is best at 6, let's do it at 6.
I mean, if that's what you want to do, I'm not against it. So.
You hear stories of people that have got certain games that might be solo thing, and they'll sit there and they'll just. So Root is one example. I've heard of solo gamers who will sit there and they'll play a game of Root with all the automated opponents and no human involved whatsoever. and just sit there
Yes.
and play with it and see what happens.
Yes. It's essentially like a Roomba knife fight or something like that. You could just have.
Yeah.
So this actually leads me to another question. Always more questions. So I've just kind of started my own life as somebody who makes solo modes for people, and I'm finding it a really interesting experience because you have to capture the spirit of the game. You have to make sure that the primary designer is happy. So like for Oath, I'm making sure like is what Ricky and I are making like consistent with Cole's vision of what Oath should feel like. Then there's what Ricky and I kind of want between ourselves. And then there's also, I guess, that desire to kind of express a little bit of your own creativity and sensibilities because you just can't help it, like when you're doing creative work. So, how do you, I guess, balance between your own creative satisfaction and your fitting the spirit of the source material?
I think that fitting the spirit thing has got to be the leader. I think
Absolutely.
that is kind of the be all and the end all. There is no point in creating a soulless solo game that's completely different to the multiplayer game, and it just uses some bits that you found in the box. I don't believe in that at all. The solo mode has either got to accurately reflect a low player count multiplayer game. Daimio's an exception. Accurately reflect a low player count multiplayer game. So maybe it'll be 2-player game, maybe it'll be 3-player game, because with Dave and with Nick, we've done a few 3s recently, whereby the game is best at 3. How are we going to do 3-player? Perseverance, play it at 3. It's brilliant at 3. So the solo mode has to be 3-player. So how do we do 2 bots in 1 to do the 3-player? So yeah, that's the core principle. That the solo mode has to be right for the game. In terms then of balancing what they want and what you want, that's just down to building the working relationship with that publisher, with that designer. Quite a lot of the projects I work on are on a slightly smaller scale, so they tend to be the publisher and the designer will probably be one and the same person. It's probably someone self-publishing and they've just brought me in to do the solo. So it's very much, okay, well, it's building a balance of, this is what I want to do because it's got my name on. They're hopefully going to be selling copies based off me. So I want this to be just different enough, just interesting enough to warrant it sitting in my personal catalogue. And therefore, I feel I'm adding value, marketing, all those sort of things to it. But I also want to do what they do because they're a paying client and I'm ultimately hired to do what I'm told. If I just refuse to do what I'm told, the contract will probably cancel and I won't do it. So there is a degree of balance, and sometimes some projects do get quite in your face and quite argumentative. No, this is what needs to happen because the alternative that you're giving me won't be good. And certainly early on, working with new clients, I'll try and do good conversations with them and establish a good working relationship whereby it's like finding out how much they know about solo gaming and finding how much they know about solo modes. And if they just go, I have never played a solo mode and I've got no interest in solo modes whatsoever, you kind of go, right, okay, then you need to listen to me, and then I will use what you've just said against you when you then fight against me and say, no, we have to do this with just a roll of a dice. No, we're not doing it like that. You hired me to make these decisions because you said you knew nothing, so we're not doing it like that. And project management and working with clients and things like that goes across all walks of life in all ways. And I think I'm probably relatively good at that. I was a head of department at 23. I was a line manager at 28, and I was running entire organizations at 30. So I kind of got enough experience from other walks of life that allow me to do that project element fairly effectively.
So, when you're doing solo, you've talked about, it's a negotiation, but you're trying to fit the spirit of a game. How do these lessons apply to your work as a developer, where your job is to help make the game better and to help make it work better, but also help the designer communicate what they were initially, I think, trying to say with their game?
It's a similar process, but you're not involved in writing the questions. As a developer in a project, it's the publisher, it's the designer. They write the questions. How can we make this game perfect for this market? How can we make this game $8 to produce? How can we make this game retail for $79? How can we? That they pose all of the questions. As a developer, you don't. You just go, okay, you tell me what you want, I'll try and fit that brief. And a lot of publishers are really good now at producing pretty good, pretty thorough briefs. Right, we want the game to have this, and this physical component included. We've got this much. We've got this much in terms of art. You can have this many cards. You can do this. You can do that. You can't do this, that, and the other. They're pretty good at kind of giving you the constraints. And the developer, you kind of go, right, okay, I have the artistic vision of the designer. I've got the development brief from the publisher that says this is what we want product-wise. Let's try and fit one into the other. Let's play it with the right people as many times as we can and try and fit it into that bracket. And it's just about shaping it and molding it. And some projects you're working alongside the designer very closely. Some projects you're working alongside the publisher very closely. Some products you're in a cupboard working on it on your own, and you'll just pop out with the finished thing and go, nah. And it's different fits for different companies, really.
And then how does all of this kind of come together in the rulebook editing aspect of your work? I feel like this is something you do less than you do the other things, but I actually really enjoy rulebook editing, and I really appreciate a good rulebook. So how have the other aspects of your work, I guess, impacted you as an editor and rules writer? And what have you come away with?
Yeah, I think it fits quite well within development. I think it's quite easy to be the lead developer on a project or be a developer on the project and write the rule book, because you've got the in-depth understanding of the game to be able to express it in the right way. You're used to teaching it, because essentially if you're running playtests as a developer, you are teaching the game over and over and over again, so you know how to teach it. And teaching a game and writing the rule book is slightly different. You do it in a slightly different way, but it gives you a lot of the grounding. I know the best way to explain this. I know when I talk about this, I have to put an example in because people won't visually click it. So that I think helps a lot. I find rulebook editing something quite easy to do when my brain's had enough. Because if you're developing a project and the brain is switched on and you're going, right, I need to tweak this and I need to rebalance that and I need to do this and I need to do it and do the other, you're in that sort of slightly more creative mindset. You need to be really switched on. You need to concentrate. You need to make sure you're getting it right. Rulebook editing is something you can kind of zonk out and do at like 9 o'clock at night and go, right, I've had enough of thinking. All I need to do is make sure that all the commas are in the right places and everything is spelled correctly. Right, let's do a quick proofread of this rule book. And because I'm not thinking, I'm not going, oh yeah, but what if we changed that rule and we made it work a bit more like that? You just go, no, these are the words and they're in the right order and they make sense. Next sentence. So it can be a sort of downtime exercise to an extent. From a workaholic's point of view, it can be a downtime exercise that rule books actually fit in quite well. In terms of design work, it's a lot harder. So Ada's Dream, that was on Kickstarter a few months back, I designed the solo mode. The designer was not really involved at all. I'd also led all the playtesting. I did a lot of the playtesting myself. I did all the dev. I could not edit that rulebook because it was just like, this rulebook expresses the contents of my head in the order in which I thought of it. And knowing how my brain works more now in adult life than I did when I was younger, I know that, right, that's my answer. I can't think of another way of expressing that because that's the way I've written it. And I need a completely different human being, not me in a different mood. I need another human being to come in and tell me whether that makes sense or not. So you do have to make the call. And there are some projects where you go, I can't do this anymore because I'm too involved in it. I've got too into it. Generally, you can get to the point where the rulebook is pretty good and then go, okay, guys, can we step the proofreading up on this one? Because I've got a bit too into it. Also, if it's just a rulebook, job, and you never actually play the game. Like, so whether I'll admit this or not, but I've said it. I've started saying it now, so I will. Halls of Hegra, I've not played.
You're missing out, actually.
So
It's a very
I
good
did the
one.
rule book. I did the rule book for that. I've taught the game. I've watched other people play the game, and I've used the rule book to run blind playtests. Never actually sat there and played it.
That's hilarious. I mean, I guess I could see how it would happen that way. I mean, you're hired to do work on a number of different things, and it's not like you don't do enough games. You can't get a good theoretical understanding of what's supposed to happen and how to express it. But that's funny. Yeah, actually, this leads right into something I had been wanting to ask, which was, do you prefer to just do like one aspect of a game, or do you want to be hands-on on as many of the things that you can do as possible? So, like, if you're the dev, do you also want to do rules? Do you prefer that somebody else does the rules? If you're doing solo design, do you also want to be a developer for the main game, or do you prefer not to and to do specific things for specific games?
I want the project to be as good as possible, and I want my work to be as good as possible for the project. And sometimes that means I'll take more on because I think I can do a better job of it than it's being done at the moment, or it's not being done, and I go, yeah, I can do that. And sometimes I go, no, I don't think this is quite me. I can't do that aspect of it. I don't think I'm the best fit for it. Here's someone else that could do it. And I think it's just being honest with yourself, just from a professional work standpoint, and just going, do you know what? I'm not the best person to be doing this. I'll crack on. We came up in Pillars of Heracles, is that we decided to split the solo mode in half because we couldn't agree what route to go down, and we were pulling against the playtesters were pulling against each other. The data was all pulling against each other. Some people were, it's got to be simpler, too complex, got to be simpler, you need to streamline this down. Some people were like, we need this to be more player-like. It's not challenging me enough like another person would. I'm just able to do it. It's too easy. And we just had these two camps, and we couldn't find a compromise. So I went, right, we're going to do both then. Here is your super streamlined, play the game on your own. Here's a set of constraints, do as well as you can, write your score down, play it again next week, see if you beat your score. This is as streamlined as we can make this experience. Here is your play against another player. Yes, it's a bit complicated. Yes, it's a bit flowcharty. Yes, there's quite a lot of rules. Yes, you're going to need the rule book next to you while you're playing the game. But boy, is it going to feel like playing this against another person. So we were able to do both extremes, and thank God that Tomas and the publishing team were able to just kind of go, okay, all right, we'll do it. We'll find the budget. We'll do it. So when we made that decision to go down those two paths, the super streamlined, play the game on your own, see how many points you get version, I handed back to them and I went, you need to find another dev to do this. This is not me. I'll keep working with my team on the 2-player version, and we'll make that as good as we can. I'm happy to read and check all the logic and all the stuff in the other version, but I don't think I should be doing the dev on it, and I don't think I should be doing on the playtesting on it, because I'm going to end up trying to pull it back towards the middle again, and that's not what people are asking for.
Interesting.
Luckily, Tomas has designed a brilliant set of scenarios for it. We've got some great playtesters that have done it, and I've gone back over and I've checked it all, and I've done some proofreading, and I've done some word editing in terms of, I think we can say this a slightly better way. I think we can explain that. Oh, actually, have you thought about making this the goal rather than this, because it feels slightly better having just read the text, but I'm probably not going to play it.
Interesting. It's also really funny hearing you talk about this stuff, because this has just been on my mind since a career changed. I've just been a high school teacher. All you have to do to be a good high school teacher is make it through the day. Like, it's a completion based task, right? And like I did better than that, but you get through the day, you've done your job. One thing that is both exhilarating and anxiety inducing about being in a design job, a project based job, is that you have to perform but you don't necessarily know what the end outcome of what you're working on is going to look like. You change goals, you change tasks, something doesn't work in testing, you have to figure it out. Um, how how have you gotten more comfortable working with that sort of uncertainty over time? And how do you kind of get yourself through that, like, "Oh my god, is this even gonna work?" stage of things?
Ah, so bit of background. My previous industry before I did what I was doing now was in the theatre and entertainment industry. So for 25 years, I worked in theatres putting shows on.
That's awesome.
That industry has an attitude towards deadlines that I've never found anywhere else. This show opens and people are going to be watching it at 7:30. That is an absolute deadline. There is no choice in this whatsoever. There are 100, 500, 15,000 people waiting to watch this show at that time. You have no choice but to be ready. And the state that it is in at that point is what you've got. And sometimes that's easy breezy, and you're done by 2:30, and you go, great. What should we make anything ever so slightly better? Nah, we'll save some energy because tomorrow's going to be a hit show. And then there's some where you're just like, right, okay, what's the absolute bare minimum we can get away with because we've got 3 minutes left. And that, growing up in an industry like that, and growing up in an industry where hard work is expected and never rewarded, gives you a different view on life than a lot of board game publishers work with. I'm going to call him out here, and it's going to be funny because he's never going to listen to this. So Cesar, who is the head of Alley Cat, whenever you ask Cesar, when do you need this done by? His answer will be as soon as possible. For him, that means when you get round to it. For me, that means don't sleep or eat until this thing is finished.
Yeah, like, to me, that sounds like now. I want it now.
So it's just, from a project management point of view, it's just going, right, what do you mean by that? Oh, well, next Friday? Right, okay. Well, that's not as soon as possible then, is it? Because this is 2 hours work that I can spread out over the next week and a half. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, a new industry works differently, and you do have to learn it, and you kind of have to go, okay, well, what are the pinch points? Graphic designers. And where are things going to slow down, and where do I need to be ahead, and what are the problems going to be? And you just learn that over time, and you kind of go, okay, well, what playtesting structure is going to work for this game? Do we need to blitz this, and we just need to get as many people as we can playing it as much as we can over a really short period? Do we just trickle this over the course of a year, and we try and play it a couple of times a month, and we just keep it pootling? It's just about finding those solutions for each project, and they'll all look slightly different. But if you're basing it off good work relationships with the people that are involved, the projects will kind of work out in the end most of the time, eventually.
Let us hope. And so, a lot of what we talked about, I think, focuses too on like making a client happy, fitting somebody else's intentions, working as a team. Are there any designs that you're working on that are just you, that you're working on by yourself and getting ready to pitch?
I have in the past done sort of from the scratch full game designs. I haven't designed for a while, and that's lack of spark. That's a sort of mental approach, mental health type thing of, I'm a workaholic. I know I'm a workaholic. I need to work. I need to be doing stuff all the time. I feel like I'm doing well and I'm succeeding if I'm getting paid to do something, because that's the way, much as I hate it, that's capitalism's way of saying, well done, you're doing this. Congratulations, you have succeeded at doing this because we're paying you for it. I don't like it, but that's just what the world feels like. So I don't do much designing because I haven't got anything to product yet. I struggle to invest that time to do it. There are games I've designed. I think they're good. I haven't yet found a publisher that agrees with me. Does that mean I've stopped completely? No, I'm not gonna draw a line under it yet. Yes, I've got a couple of meetings set up at Essen in a few weeks. Yes, I'm going to be pitching some product. I'm still excited about them. I still think that, I've play tested them enough at conventions. I've play tested them enough online to know that people would buy these games if they were real. If they were a thing, someone would buy them. Is that enough people to make the project viable? Don't know. That's an area, marketing and generating sales and finding the right product for the right moment. That's a black art to me. There's other people that know how to do that who don't know how to dev games and design solo modes. Great, they can do that bit. I've had enough people tell me they're good games to think that they're still viable. Otherwise, I wouldn't still go about pitching them. So you never know, I suppose, is the answer to that. They're there. If I get a few that take off and someone says, "Are you designing anything at the moment?" and I'll start going, "No, but I probably should." Because I've now had a couple of things published, or I've had a couple of things signed, or I've had a crowdfunding campaign that was really successful. I better do something else. There's enough ideas still in a notebook or buried in the back of my brain somewhere that I could pick it back up and give it another go. But I just need enough of a kick up the arse externally to make me do that, I think.
That's fair. And then, kind of an interesting question I've gotten a lot now that I've gone full time in the board game industry is, how did you do it? How did you end up there? So, what is your, I guess, story about how you went from, being really into theater production and being very far along on that path, and then deciding to, as we were talking about before the show, like split your year between game design and coaching cricket?
We've got COVID to thank for that. So when COVID hit, I was senior management in a theatre organisation, and I was very fortunate within the industry to be part of an organisation that was run by local authority. So it was a council owned and run venue. Therefore, when COVID hit and when all theatres across the country shut indefinitely, we were still getting paid. And our jobs were safe. Now, we had to go and do other stuff. We had to go and do food deliveries. We had to go and work with the parks teams. We had to go and help out in offices. We had to do site work, because we were council employees. We were just seconded into other departments. We had to do what we were doing. But that was never going to fill the amount of hours that we were working. So, and then the whole furlough system came in. There was a whole grey area as can local authorities furlough people because they're essential, but they're not essential depending on what department it is. So there was a whole grey area there. But for the majority of that year, from when it all went wrong in March, all the way through to when we tried to put a panto on that winter, and then we got pulled just before Christmas because the government changed its mind, rightly, but too late, and changed its mind. Throughout that period, I was getting paid to essentially not do much. As a senior manager, I was still in charge. I still had to pop in once a week and make sure the building hadn't burnt down, but I didn't have to go to work every day. I needed to fill my time with stuff, and that's when I went to all of my contacts within the board game industry and went, "Give me things to do. I need stuff to do. No cricket, no theatre. I need to fill my time." So Undaunted was in that period. Can you spend 350 hours playing Undaunted trying to work the solo mode out? Yep. When do you need it done by? I can do that. I can do that for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. Of course I can. I couldn't have done that at any other period in time. And when we got back, when theatre started opening again, and when we were able to go back to work, and we were able to start putting shows again, and the world was recovering, my organisation went through a restructure. Everyone liked being restructured, and I ended up doing 3 jobs.
Oh.
So what had previously
Well, you
been
are a
done by...
workaholic. They must have thought that was what you wanted. Don't you?
Yeah, but the problem is with local authority, they want you to do 3 jobs, but they still only want you to do 37 hours a week. I was doing 60 hours a week, and the overtime bill was racking up. And they were going, "No, we can't possibly pay you all this overtime because you've not been doing it. What do you want me to do?
Geez.
Do you want the organisation to fall apart, or do you want me to keep doing all these out?"
Right.
And we got through the restructure, and I safeguarded 90% of my team's jobs. And we got through senior management changes, and we got through massive changes in how the organisation was going to work. And I has done as good a job as I could safeguarding my team and the way that we did things, and the way that I felt things needed to be doing. And we reached that end of period of very high stress, very high intensity work. And I went, I've had enough. I had enough about 18 months ago, but now I've got to the point where I feel like I can give it to someone else, and they can pick it up and run with it, and they can take it forwards. I don't think I've got any energy left to take this forwards. I can keep maintaining the status quo, and it's not going to get worse, which it was in danger of doing for quite a long time. But I think this is the right time for someone else to take on this role and see how they can change it, and take on this team that we've saved, and this building that we've saved, and this organisation that we've saved. And I'll go away and I'll do something else. And I decided to do more cricket coaching and keep running with the ball game stuff. And that was what, 2 years ago. So I went straight into a cricket season, where it was just like, do you know what? I'm gonna do some coaching. Me and my mate, we're going to set up this new company, and we're going to try and do some stuff, and we'll just see where it takes us. And I'm going to have a bit of a chilled summer, and then make sure I've got enough ball game stuff to pay the bills. And then when cricket finishes, we'll build up and we'll work out what happens next. The cricket stuff just went off like an absolute rocket, and I spent that whole summer teaching in schools, and the whole of the summer holidays running camps and working with elite teams and things. And then that's just kept rolling, and the business has got bigger and bigger and bigger. Excellent. And this summer, I've hardly done anything ball gaming wise for like 3-4 months, because I just haven't got time. And it's only now that the cricket season has finished, kids are all back to school. I did have a fairly quiet August with Mel and the girls, but now I'm getting back into games full time, and trying to build the momentum back up, and going, kind of going to clients, right, if you need me to do anything, I need to get this done by February, because otherwise I'm going to go away again for 6 months. I'm just trying to strike that balance again. So yeah, that's kind of how all that fell into place, and what it sort of looks like now.
I mean, it actually sounds pretty good. Like a couple of like totally different, interesting seasons of the year. It's a good way to mark time.
And I think for me, the timing works quite well. By the middle of August, my legs are tired, my voice has had enough of shouting. I kind of feel like I need to just have a sit down and stay indoors for a bit.
Yeah.
And then by about January, February, it's just like, I am sick of being behind a computer screen, just need to see people. And oh look, I'm doing some cricket coaching again. So it sort of works. I can sort of cope with the level of intensity that I work at for about 4 or 5 months, and the next one starts to feed in, and it just reinvigorates me enough to be able to keep going at the levels at which I go at.
That's awesome. All right, so this is a perfect time then to just kind of do a couple softy questions. One is, so you're not solo gaming anymore, like Tears. But what games are you playing right now that bring you some joy?
Good question. Mel and I are playing Sleeping Gods at the moment. which we're enjoying. It's quite there's aspects of it. I think we've already house ruled one thing. There's a couple of aspects that we kind of go, oh, I wish this wasn't like this. But generally, as a sort of storytelling experience, we're really enjoying it. Given the opportunity, I will still pull out my mid to heavyweight Euros. If anyone says, what should we play? I can go, how about a game of, Darwin's Journey, Raiders of the North Sea. I'll still pull out, the Simone Luciani games. It was, a game of Newton or a game of Lorenzo Il Magnifico. We have, we're going to try and be a little bit more regular over the winter, but of having a Saturday tea party once every month or once every couple of months, where we play a tea game and have tea and cake.
That's awesome.
So your Trismegistuses, your Zolkins, Teotihuacans, Tekenyus, that just kind of going, okay, well, we're going to spend 3 or 4 hours playing this. We're not going to rush. We're going to really enjoy the experience of it. So those things get played. David is a good gaming friend of mine who also does some play testing and things for me. He only lives in the village over the road, or sort of the other side of the woods. We're playing Maracaibo together and have been for a few years. So if there's just the two of us of a Saturday afternoon, then we'll get Maracaibo out. We're about 3/4 of the way through the expansion in terms of following the story. But it just gives you a little bit of structure to play it, and we can bugger about with it around there.
Fantastic.
So yeah,
and
there's a few.
Hey, it's a few is better than none. And if people want to find you online, follow your work, where do you most like to be found?
Social media wise, for board gaming stuff, I'm under my own identity in most of the board gaming groups on Facebook. And I have my own Facebook page, which is under David Digby Board Games. That is run by me, and I am rubbish at remembering to do things and be reliable and all the sort of stuff that I get told for our other business that's got a proper social media management system that says you've got to do posts at 7 o'clock every day and post a video every Tuesday. I'm not like that. I'm rubbish. I'll post stuff when I feel like it, and it'll go quiet for ages, and then I'll put a load of stuff on at once. It's not how you're supposed to do it, but it's what happens. I'm also on BGG. My BGG page acts as my sort of living CV. So all of my projects are listed under my identity on BGG. And I'm subscribed to all the things that I've had a hand in, I think. So I'll pop up when there's sort of dev questions or solo questions or stuff come up in the forums. And I'll answer messages that I get sent through BGG as well. I don't do Twitter, X, Instagram, Reddit, all of that sort of stuff, ball gaming wise. I can concentrate on a couple of things, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. I, on the other hand, am terminally online and can be found anywhere as Beyond Solitaire for those of you who are out there. But David, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed getting to talk to you.
No problem. Thanks, Liz. It's been good fun.
All right, everybody out there, please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, and most of all, happy gaming.